Episode 25. See how I take care of that bitch. Monica saw that the sports car was following Daniela at a distance. There was a trace of doubt in her eyes. Does the owner of the sports car know Danny? Stacy exploded in mock laughter and pouted her red lips in disdain. Monica, are you serious? You're overthinking. There's absolutely no way someone of that caliber would have any connection or interest in her. Danny has already lost her chastity. How could a Lycan Hypersport owner like her? Even a middle-aged uncle would not like her. Monica pursed her lips thoughtfully, turning her eyes away from the Lycan Hypersport sports car, and looked sideways at Stacy with a soft smile. I guess you're right. I am overthinking. As far as I know, Stacy, the broadcast station is only recruiting 4 anchors, and I was already accepted directly. You were ranked 3rd during the first interview, so as long as there are no issues in the second interview, you will definitely get in. Stacy smiled proudly. Although my level of expertise and experience is not yet at your level, I am confident that I'm good enough to be accepted. That may have been the case, except Monica sighed and looked a little flustered. I asked someone to look at the results from 2 days ago. Daniela was late, but it seems that because of her beauty, Director Grace still allowed her to go through the interview. Other than deducting some points for not meeting punctuality, her results were better than yours, and she ended up with a rank just above you. Stacy's eyes widened in disbelief. Isn't Grace well known for hating people who are not punctual? She had never given anyone a second chance before. You're saying that Danny was late but still got to attend the interview? Stacy gritted her teeth furiously. That pretentious bitch. She must have acted coquettishly again. Director Grace is a woman, Monica interjected. Because she is such a slut, she even tries to seduce a woman? Stacy insisted. There was absolutely no way Daniela would have gotten scores higher than her if she did not use despicable methods. Monica looked at Stacy, who despised Daniela down to her bones. She added lightly, who asked her to have a face that's attractive to both men and women? When she becomes an anchor, I'm afraid the audience will like her too. Daniela's beauty was unique, but also not outlandish or aggressive. She had an inexplicable charm that made one want to get close to her, male or female. That kind of charm would definitely attract a large proportion of the audience. Monica's words reminded Stacy of the class monitor she had secretly loved. If Danny had not hurt her beloved class monitor, he would not have left Michaeltown. It was all her fault. All the old memories were dredged up from the depths of her memory, and a new hatred fired up from within Stacy, igniting her jealousy. She snorted in contempt. Monica, just you wait. See how I'm going to take care of that evil bitch. Danny reached the entrance of the broadcasting station when she suddenly heard the jarring sound of a car horn. She turned her head on reflex and saw that the sports car had followed her and shuddered, pretending not to notice him. The man was wearing black sunglasses that obscured most of his face. He raised a careless hand resting on the car window, putting his index finger and middle finger close together, and then placing them upon his sexy thin lips. He blew lightly, giving her a frivolous flying kiss. That look was the epitome of both handsome and arrogant. Narcissist. Danny was afraid of being seen and quickly looked away, pretending not to know the man, and quickly made her way to the door. The man twitched his lips, stepping on the accelerator, and the sports car sped off. Daniela breathed a sigh of relief and was about to walk into the lobby of the broadcasting station when she suddenly felt a wet heat that was rapidly spreading across her chest. She looked down in dismay to see a coffee-colored liquid spreading down her light blue suit. Shit. Oh, I'm sorry. It seems I've just sprained my foot and was not holding my coffee steadily. I didn't spill it on you intentionally. Although she was apologizing, Stacy's pretty face did not look at all apologetic. On the contrary, her face was one similar to the cat that had eaten the canary, smug and pleased with her accidental mishap. There were only 10 minutes left before the second interview. Even if Danny had asked someone to bring a change of clothes for her, it would be too late. She was left with two choices: to wear the coffee stained clothing to the interview, or the second option was for her to leave and find a set of clothes to change into, which would leave her late for the second time. No matter which option she chose, both situations were extremely unfavorable and would definitely lead to a negative impression of her. It was her last chance, especially since she had been late the first round. After Stacy apologized to Danny, she did not wait for her to say anything and flounced into the elevator, holding on to Monica with her nose up in a self-important manner. Just as the elevator door was about to close, a hand suddenly shot in. Daniela squeezed onto the elevator and her body fell forward. There was a hiss, and a long tear appeared on Stacy's white satin dress after being pulled by Danny, exposing her snow-white skin underneath. Danny imitated the mocking tone Stacy had used previously. "Oh, I'm sorry. I've just sprained my foot while rushing for the lift and accidentally pulled at your skirt." Ah! Stacy saw that her skirt had been torn by Danny, and her lacy bra and a large area of her chest were now exposed. She screamed hysterically and grabbed onto Danny like a wailing siren. "Daniela, you did this on purpose. Do you know how much this dress cost?" Stacy was glowering with anger, and she was so furious she was almost spitting fire. She pointed a finger at Danny's nose and exploded. "Do you even know who Albus is? He's a famous designer known internationally who possesses extraordinary talent and is also a designer hired by the royal family of S Country. His latest design for the spring collection has only 12 sets in the world. You can't get it, even if you're rich. Do you know how honorable and difficult it is to have a dress designed by Albus? It took my brother a lot of effort and money to obtain it for me. He damaged it within an inch of its life. Daniela, I'm going to call the police, sue you, and send you to jail." Looking at the furious Stacy, Danny lowered her eyes, hiding the emotions within her eyes, and smiled faintly. "Stacy, there are surveillance cameras in the elevator. As I said, I fell on you because I accidentally sprained my foot." As Stacy's mouth opened again in outrage, Daniela continued. "I haven't asked you yet. Why are you in such a hurry to close the elevator door when you knew I was coming? You already spilled coffee on me. You can't go against me just because you're afraid you can't pass the interview." The people in the elevator saw the obvious coffee stains on Daniela's light blue suit. A kind person could not help but speak up for her. "It's not nice to spill coffee on people." Stacy gritted her teeth and turned back to look at the person who spoke. "What do you know? I didn't mean to spill it on her." Danny nodded. "I believe you didn't do it on purpose. You should also believe that I didn't do it on purpose, too." Stacy's eyes grew red, and she snapped at Danny. "How can you compare those rags on you with mine? Even if I did spill the coffee on you on purpose, I could compensate you with another one. You tore my dress. Can you afford to compensate me?" Daniela hummed thoughtfully and gave an elegant yet easygoing smile. "So, you spilled it on me intentionally." I Monica saw that the others in the elevator cast strange looks at Stacy. She pulled on Stacy's arm and shook her head, signaling her to stop quarreling. The other people in the elevator went out, leaving Stacy, Monica, and Daniela in the elevator. Monica said softly, "Stacy, don't be upset. Didn't Brother Carl give me a set of Alva's clothes?" It's in my car. I'll get it for you later. Stacy was moved to tears. Monica, you're so kind to me. I'm so glad you're going to be my sister-in-law. If it was someone else, I'd feel sick to my stomach. Monica smiled and patted Stacy's arm. From the corner of her eyes, she looked at Daniela, who did not seem jealous, even after hearing that Carl had given her clothes designed by Albus. Her face darkened. She did not believe Danny had no feelings for Carl. She wanted to make her jealous, angry, and envious. But Danny did not show any of those reactions. She was as calm and indifferent as an outsider. Sister, there's also a haute couture suit in my car. If you say some nice things to me and beg me, I can consider lending them to you. The second interview is starting soon. If you go in like this, you will fail the interview straight away. Monica turned up her nose and said in a condescending manner. Daniela looked at Monica coldly, then lifted her lips slightly, her eyes mocking. I'm afraid the clothes of a shorty won't suit me. Monica was furious to hear Danny calling her short, but these few years she had learned to control her emotions. She gritted her teeth and snorted. Well, I'd like to see how you are going to the interview in those dirty clothes. Episode 26. Surprise. Daniela looked at the time after getting out of the elevator. There were only 6 minutes left before the second interview. She didn't have much time. She walked quickly to the restroom. The second interview needed to assess professional knowledge, and image also played a very important role in this assessment. Stacy knew this factor very well, so she had deliberately spilled the coffee on her. Danny pursed her lips tightly and dabbed gently at the coffee stains on her clothes with a cold expression. After washing off most of the stains, the water-soaked clothes became transparent, and her bra was clearly visible. You're here for the second interview? Why are your clothes so wet? A soft voice came from behind her. Danny looked up and saw a girl standing beside her through the bathroom mirror's reflection. The girl was less than 20 years old. Her face was pretty. She seemed hesitant and shy. Do you need a hairdryer? The girl asked kindly in a low voice, blinking her eyes and looking at Daniela innocently. Danny considered her less than desirable state. She did need a hairdryer, even if the clothes could not be fully dried. Half-dried would still be better than they were now. It could work. Thank you. You're welcome. My name is Christy. The girl brought Daniela into a dressing room. Before entering the dressing room, Danny looked at the nameplate on the doorframe. Maria Witcher. After Danny returned from abroad, she had a good understanding of the current situation at the broadcasting station. Maria was a top anchorwoman who was very popular. She had won the Golden Microphone Award before and was the pillar of support in the broadcasting station. Christy, is this Senior Maria's private dressing room? I don't think it's a good idea for me to go in. Don't worry about it. You're only borrowing a hairdryer. It won't be any problem. After hearing her words, Daniela entered the dressing room and Christy handed her the hairdryer. Halfway through blow-drying her clothes, the telltale sound of high-heeled shoes could be heard from outside. Christy's expression changed. Don't tell me it's Sister Maria. As soon as Daniela put down the hairdryer, the dressing room door flew open. A woman in a golden suit strode into the room with great vigor, her wavy hair bouncing in luscious curls down her back. Seeing Danny, the woman frowned. Who is she? Christy lowered her head, her voice fearful. Sister Maria, she's here for the anchor interview. Her clothes got wet, so she came in here to borrow the hairdryer. Maria snorted. She sat down at the dressing table and said coldly, There will be a live broadcast at 10 o'clock that needs me to host. Help me touch up my makeup. Yes, Sister Maria. Danny stood at one side and politely thanked Maria and Christy. Maria ignored her, but Christy nodded with a smile. Daniela turned and walked towards the door. but she heard Christie's soft gasp after she had taken just a few steps away from them. She turned around and saw Christie being kicked to the ground by Maria's high-heeled stilettos. Are you really that clumsy and useless? You can't even touch up my makeup properly. Maria stood up from the chair, taking off an oval diamond ring from her middle finger and handing it to Christie. I can't wear a diamond ring during the broadcast. Keep it for me, and if you even dare to lose it, just wait and see how I'll take care of you. Maria strutted off proudly in her high heels and did not look at Daniela when she passed her. After Maria left, Danny lifted Christie from the ground. Are you okay? Christie shook her head with a pale face. My stomach is a little uncomfortable. If you could help me to the chair, thank you. It's all right. Danny did not expect the elegant and good-natured Maria on screen was actually such a fierce and malicious person in private. All of a sudden, a scream of joy came from the dressing room next door. Monica, I'm not seeing it wrong, right? It's Elvis! My God, why has Elvis come to our broadcasting station? Come and look. Hurried footsteps could be heard outside, along with the sound of an excited and bubbling voice she could vaguely recognize as Stacy. Monica, after my clothes were torn by Danny, you called my brother, right? Do you think it was my brother who invited Elvis here? Oh my goodness, the clothes his assistant is holding surely couldn't be mine, could they? There were 3 tall figures in suits and leather shoes standing in the corridor, headed by a young man with a well-defined face and distinct facial features who looked to have mixed blood. Following behind him were 2 assistants, their arms laden with various styles of clothing. Oh my God, Monica, oh my God! Are they holding custom-made spring clothes that are the same style as the Princess Consort of S Country? I saw the Princess Consort wearing these not long ago online. This set of clothes can't be bought even if you have the money. Stacy was in high heaven. Her voice rambled on excitedly at high speed, and she nearly salivated at the sight of Elvis's beautiful designs. How did my brother do it? I really admire my brother. Monica, after you marry my brother, you will be a young mistress who enjoys a happy life. Since my brother knows Elvis, it seems he will be able to allow me to wear the same style of clothes as the Princess Consort. What an honor! Don't you think my brother is so awesome? Although I knew my brother had expanded the Forrest family business to a whole new level in recent years, I did not expect him to be so good that he could invite Elvis. Stacy held her face in her small hands, her eyes gleaming with excitement. She loved fashion and was very knowledgeable about the haute couture of big brands. Ever since she saw an interview of Elvis in a magazine, she regarded him as an idol. He was young, handsome, and talented. Every piece of the clothing he designed led the fashion industry from his creative mindset. Every piece was one of a kind. No matter how expensive the clothes were, they would be sold out as soon as they were on the market. For Stacy, Elvis was like a god out of reach. She had never dreamed that she would one day be able to see him in person. Monica looked at Stacy, who was jumping in excitement and babbling on without end, and she frowned, a puzzled look on her face. Although she did call Carl when she went to take her clothes from the car, she had only told him how Daniela provoked her and tore Stacy's clothes. Carl at that time did not say anything about giving Stacy a surprise. Although Stacy was Carl's sister, Monica was hoping that this surprise was for her. What an honor it was to have Elvis personally bring clothes over. It must have taken Carl a lot of effort and money. It was inevitable that Monica would be dissatisfied and jealous with him spoiling his sister like that. Carl had not been this attentive even to her. But how did he manage to invite Elvis? Stacy saw Elvis walking over and could not suppress her happiness. She rushed forward with a bright smile. Hello, Elvis. Thank you for coming down personally to bring me the clothes. Elvis looked at Stacy and saw that she was wearing a spring piece he had designed, and his face expressed his confusion. Are you Miss Nunn? Miss Monica? Stacy looked at Monica and wondered if her brother had asked Elvis to pass the clothes to Monica and then let Monica pass it to her. Monica was the first to react, an excited smile forming. As expected, Carl loved her the most. Even if it was his sister, Stacy could only stand at her side. Nice to meet you, Mr. Alvis. I'm Miss Monica. Alvis's blue eyes swept toward Monica and looked at her. You're Miss Monica? Yes, that's me. Monica walked towards Alvis and looked up slightly. Her face was glowing with pride and joy. Daniela and Christy heard the commotion going on outside and hurriedly came out of the dressing room. When Stacy saw Daniela, she could not help but boast. My brother really loves Monica and I. He knew that my dress was torn by a jealous bitch and immediately contacted Alvis, who happens to be in Michaeltown. Daniela, I'm sure that you probably can only meet Alvis through me and Monica's generosity. So please, if you think you want an autograph from Alvis, you can beg me for it. If you please me and I'm in a good mood, maybe I can help you get one from him. Episode 27. Unacceptable. Monica felt good after hearing Stacy's words. Daniela must be feeling jealous and mad seeing how Carl had invited Alvis for her, right? After all, not everyone had the chance to meet Alvis. He was the #1 designer that commoners like Danny would never be able to meet, even in their wildest dreams, let alone be able to wear one of his stunning designs. If Carl continued to build his relationship with Elvis, she might be able to go to S Country next time and meet the royal family. Thinking of this, Monica's thoughts started to get a little carried away. When her father married Daniela's mother, she had lived in a small town with her mother. She had always been treated as an illegitimate daughter and suffered so much ridicule and humiliation. Fortunately, those dark days were over. The things that Daniela once had, she now had it all. She had robbed Danny of her father's love and her fiancé. Even if Daniela's interview was successful, Monica would do everything she could to get her kicked out in the future. She would not let that arrogant bitch take what was hers. The things that Daniela cared about most, she would take them all away. As for the things that she and her mother had painstakingly attained, she would grasp them firmly with her hands. She would never let Danny take them back. Monica did not want to confront Danny in front of Elvis, as it would make her seem uncivilized and rude. She simply smiled elegantly and said, Mr. Elvis, this is our dressing room. Please come in. Elvis took the clothes from his assistant and walked forward. Miss Monica, this dress is handmade and elegant. It suits your temperament very well. I hope you will like it. I like it very much. Thank you, Elvis. Monica responded, clearly pleased by the comment, but found something was amiss. Elvis's deep blue eyes were not looking at her, but directed towards where Daniela was. It couldn't be. Monica's mind went blank for a moment. She broke out of her daze. Elvis, I think you made a mistake. Carl is my fiancé. He asked you to bring a dress for me, right? That lady's surname is also Green, but... Elvis impatiently interrupted Monica, his handsome face cold and serious. Miss, the clothes I've brought today are only suitable for tall women. Monica's expression changed, and she pursed her lips, wanting to say something. But Stacy stepped forward to interrupt. Monica, my brother asked Elvis to bring me a dress. What are you anxious about? Stacy walked up to Elvis, straightened her back, and gave him a flattering smile. Elvis, are you going to pass the clothes to me? It's very kind of you. Monica was not happy with how things were turning out, but as long as Elvis did not come for Daniela. Stacy held out her hand towards Elvis, full of expectation and joy at the thought that she would soon be able to wear the same dress as the princess consort. That would almost put her on par with royalty. Everyone was bound to see her and take notice. But just when Stacy thought Elvis would hand over the clothes to her, he walked around her without looking at her. heading straight towards the tall and slender Daniela. He bent down and said respectfully, "Beautiful and noble lady, this set of clothes is for you." Both Monica and Stacy's expressions darkened when they heard the words beautiful and noble. Then they felt a bit of anger and shame, like they had been slapped across the face when they had heard the clothes were prepared for Daniela. Why was it Daniela? What rich person had Danny found now? An ugly old man financially supported her. What dirty, despicable things had she done now? When Monica saw Elvis bringing Daniela into the next dressing room, her hands clenched into tight fists. She must find the rich man Danny had gotten together with. Even if it was a sleazy old man, she would tell that man how dirty Daniela was. The second interview went very successful. Danny stood out from more than 10 re-examinees with her perfect image, solid stage presence, eloquence, and strong professionalism. Stacy did not pass the second interview, making her turn red with anger. Her eyes sparkled with rage as Monica comforted her. "If Danny was not there, you would have passed." Stacy laughed coldly, a flicker of ruthlessness in her eyes. "Fortunately, I still have a trick or two. Monica, just you wait. Even if Daniela has passed her second interview, she will soon realize that she is rejoicing too soon." Monica pulled Stacy to a corner and exclaimed in amazement, as though she was very surprised. "Stacy, you already have an idea to make Daniela leave the broadcasting station?" Since they were good friends, Stacy did not plan to hide it from Monica. As a result, she told Monica everything about her backup plan. Monica's eyes turned as large as globes, and she clapped her hands in agreement. "Stacy, you're really smart. If the plan is a success, Daniela would have a non-erasable stain in her life. After this, and no other broadcasting company would even think to hire her in the future." Stacy smirked evilly. She was full of confidence that her plan would be a complete success. Daniela had caused her to lose her first love and caused both Monica and herself to humiliate themselves like clowns in front of her biggest idol, Elvis. She would definitely get her kicked out of the industry in the most shameful way. "Let's not talk about it for now. Daniela is right here." Both Monica and Stacy looked towards Danny, who was walking out of the multimedia studio. She was wearing a purplish pink long maxi dress that perfectly suited her tall and slender figure. Her dress was perfectly matched with a set of high heels and a pair of earrings in the same color scheme. Her fair skin was creamy and white, flawless, and comparable to the whiteness of snow. The unique color of the outfit did not overshadow her beauty at all. The charm and loveliness of the gentlewoman were brought out amongst the innocence she was exuding. She had been brought up in a wealthy family from young after all. The clothes that Elvis designed seemed to have been made just for her. She looked elegant, modest, and dignified. Both Monica and Stacy clenched their teeth, hatred bubbling in their minds. They had been gloating earlier to her about having an outfit that Elvis had designed. In the end, Elvis came to the broadcasting company personally to give Daniela a long dress that was similar to that of the princess consort. The pride they had felt in front of Danny had been thrown back in their faces, and they felt utterly humiliated. "Monica, just wait for the good show." Stacy's anger and embarrassment went away slightly at the thought of what was about to happen. They just needed to be patient. After the second interview, a few people who had been accepted were invited to tour the broadcasting company and begin as interns the following Monday. Daniela was feeling a little thirsty and walked to the kitchenette to get some water. As she finished her drink, a sharp, cold draught of air blew towards her, just as she turned her head. Following that, a tight slap landed on her right cheek. A fiery pain spread out instantly, staining her cheek pink. She blacked out for a few seconds as her head spun. Several people, including a few interviewers who had exited the media studio, looked towards her direction at the sound of the crisp slap. Out of the 4 people they accepted this time, Miss Grace had the highest hopes for Daniela. She walked over immediately, seeing that Danny had been slapped by a fierce Maria. She asked in confusion, "Maria, why did you hit her?" Maria's face was made up and twisted in aggravation, and her nostrils flared. She pointed at Danny's nose and shouted in anger without any regard for her image. "Director Grace, I'm really starting to question your working ability. Weren't you the one who was always talking about high standards? Aren't you embarrassed to cover up for this type of person who has such a questionable personality? What is it? Any pretty face can come to work at the broadcasting company now?" Miss Grace furrowed her eyebrows. She was unhappy with Maria's attitude. It was overstepping her boundaries, and she wouldn't be afraid to put her in her place. "Maria, are you questioning my ability to hire people? You'd better clearly clarify today what you mean by your accusing words. How is Daniela's personality questionable?" Danny's skin was as white and tender as tofu. 5 bright red fingerprints had appeared on her delicate skin immediately after Maria's heavy slap. Prints were angry, red, and swollen. The lip sides were also bleeding. Daniela wiped away the blood at the side of her lips. She was not angered beyond control, nor was she flustered and exasperated. She merely stared at Maria with eyes so calm that they were sharp and cold. She said slowly, her voice sharp and frosty, "Miss Maria, may I ask how I have offended you? What did I do to deserve this baffling slap from you?" Daniela was cold and calm. She did not bare her teeth in anger, even in such a situation. She did not look fearful at all as she stood opposite the unbearably arrogant Maria. In fact, Maria's imposing manner seemed to deflate from Danny's unruffled calmness. Episode 28, Framed. The number of onlookers grew, and several pair of eyes were staring at Daniela. The staff working at the broadcasting company all knew that Maria Witcher's temper was bad when she was off camera. Whoever upset her would definitely have a hard time. If she wanted to, she could even ruin a career. Everyone was waiting for Daniela to embarrass herself. Stacy and Monica were standing close by. Both of their mouths were curled up into identical smirks, clearly taking pleasure in Daniela's misfortune. "Just wait, Monica. Hannah Grace will definitely fire Daniela once she finds out what she's done to Maria Witcher. The show has only just started." Even though Stacy didn't know how Daniela knew Elvis, she wouldn't let Daniela have a good life, especially since she'd embarrassed herself in front of Elvis. Monica was equally looking forward to seeing Daniela be cast away by everyone. She couldn't wait for Hannah Grace to kick Daniela out of the company. The thought of it made her so happy. Miss Witcher scoffed coldly at the sight of Daniela, who didn't even have a shadow of panic on her face. She stared at Daniela with hatred and let out a snidey laugh. You are pretending to be innocent. My oval ring is gone. I remember you went into my dressing room before your interview." Daniela pressed her lips. "Yes, your assistant took me there." The face of Hannah Grace and several other interviewers grew gloomy. Although it was hard to get along with Maria Witcher, she would not accuse others without reason. Besides, Daniela was just a nobody. There was no reason to frame her. Everyone knew that Miss Witcher loved her oval diamond ring. The ring was rumored to cost over $1 million, and Miss Witcher would wear it whenever she wasn't working. Did Daniela really steal the ring? A thief with no honor would not be tolerated anywhere. Daniela watched as the gazes of the people around her turned suspicious, judging her already. She looked into Miss Witcher's angry face and said calmly, "Ma'am, you should know the law. It's also illegal to slander and frame someone, isn't it? Maria Witcher didn't expect a thief to still act so brave. Her face growing even more serious, she said coldly, "When did I frame you? Weren't you wearing a cheap outfit that looked like it cost just a few $100s when you entered my dressing room? What are you wearing now?" Now everyone's attention focused on Daniela's attire as Miss Witcher continued her tirade. "You clearly seduced some old man with your pretty looks, despite being so young, and got sponsored by him. How shameless of you! The old man didn't want to give you a diamond ring, so you tried to steal mine." Daniela found the whole situation funny, and her lips quirked. She slightly raised an eyebrow as her almond eyes flashed. "Ma'am, where's your proof?" "Christy, come over here," Miss Witcher called coldly. Christy walked over with her head down and eyes red. Christy had been Miss Witcher's assistant for 2 years and was honest and gullible. Several staff of the broadcasting company knew her well and had a rather good impression of her. Christy came up to Daniela and suddenly knelt down. Her thin fingers tugged on Daniela's skirt. Her eyes were filled with tears. "Miss Daniela, please return the ring to Miss Witcher." Daniela took 2 steps back as she removed Christy's delicate hand from her skirt. Her gaze was distant. The first impression she had of Christy was rather good, and she felt pity for her when she saw Miss Witcher kick her in the dressing room. The phrase about still waters running deep was true. "Miss Green, I went to the hairdryer with good intentions because your clothes were wet. You should be grateful. Why did you steal Miss Witcher's ring when I wasn't paying attention? If you don't return the ring, Miss Witcher will send us both to prison." Christy's tears started flowing down her cheeks as her slender shoulders trembled. She looked terrified. Sonia, one of the interviewers that knew Christy, couldn't watch any further. She couldn't help but step forward and help speak for her. Christy wouldn't lie. The ring should still be on Daniela. "Miss Grace, if you find that Daniela stole the ring, there's no way she can work here. We can't work with a thief. We can't trust her." Hannah Grace furrowed her eyebrows and she said calmly, "With Daniela's talent, she should have known she would pass the interview. Why would she self-sabotage like this when she knows everyone is about to become her colleagues?" When it came down to it, Miss Grace was considering the situation from Daniela's perspective, as she had high hopes for this woman. She simply couldn't believe Daniela would do something so foolish. Sonia whispered loudly, "Who wouldn't want something that's worth over $1 million?" Miss Witcher didn't want to waste any more time. The ring was very important to her, and she believed that the shy and honest Christy would never have the guts to lie, let alone steal such a valuable ring from her. The only possible conclusion was that this new person stole her ring. This type of woman with a face too pretty were usually vain and materialistic. Just from a glance, she could tell that this woman was all looks and no talent, just a pretty face. To think Miss Grace was fooled by her appearance. "Your name is Daniela, right? I'll give you one last chance to return the ring. If you refuse, I'm calling the police. There was no point in pretending. It'll only make things worse for you." Daniela looked into Miss Witcher's heavy gaze and smiled softly, a scoff on her lips. "Ma'am, do you really have that much trust in your assistant? Do you think she doesn't hate you for bullying her every day? Do you think she has no feelings?" Miss Witcher's pupils became narrowed her eyes. "What are you talking about? Christy may be stupid, but she's very obedient, just like a dog. Why would a dog betray their owner?" Hearing how harshly Miss Witcher referred to her, so dismissive and mean, calling her a dog, Christy wept even harder. However, she continued to show her loyalty. "Daniela, I would never betray you." "Oh?" Daniela laughed lightly. You'd better be careful. A dog will bite back if it's desperate enough. Christy wiped her tears with the backs of her palms. She choked up as she leaned towards Danielle and pleaded, Miss Green, I beg you to please return the ring to Miss Witcher. I know that you want to stand out by wearing stylish clothes and expensive jewelry, but stealing is wrong. You made a mistake. Sonia had been staring at Daniela and realized that she was wearing a long dress similar to the one a Hollywood celebrity was seen in on the red carpet. That was designed by Elvis. She looked at her with contempt and sneered. Oh my god, no wonder I felt that Daniela's outfit looked familiar when she went to the interview. She's actually wearing a fake replica of the long dress that a famous actress wore to a premiere. Does she think she can become a celebrity if she wears this? A chicken will never become a phoenix. A person like this shouldn't be hired to work here. Daniela instantly became a target of ridicule. Daniela was so calm that she looked an outsider no matter how others pointed and laughed at her. And what if I didn't steal Miss Witcher's ring? How will the people who wronged me compensate for my loss of reputation? Even though Miss Witcher didn't have a good temper, she was a responsible person who owned her actions. She promised immediately, if you didn't steal the ring, I will apologize to you publicly, as will the people who have wronged you. Daniela rubbed her temple and glanced over the group of sneering people. Her red lips smirked. All right. Sonia couldn't stand Daniela's calm attitude. She thought Daniela was definitely acting. This type of person was dangerous. If we can prove that you stole Miss Witcher's ring, will you get out of the company and surrender yourself to the police? Of course. Stacy's heart thumped a little at the sight of Daniela being so calm. Daniela was so passive and uncaring, as if the situation had nothing to do with her. Stacy glanced at her friend, and Christy nodded her head at her. Stacy felt relieved. The long dress that Miss Green is wearing doesn't have pockets. She probably put the ring in the suit that she changed out of, Christy said, still sobbing. Miss Witcher grabbed the bag of clothes Daniela had at her feet. Looking serious, she passed the bag to her boss. Miss Grace, you should search it in case anyone accuses me of framing Miss Green. Episode 29. Outsmarted. At this point, Miss Grace could no longer side with Daniela. She had to be objective. She picked up the bag and pulled out Daniela's suit. Stacy elbowed Monica in excitement. She whispered, Monica, the show is about to begin. Let's see Danielle embarrass herself. Christy had placed Miss Witcher's expensive diamond ring in Daniela's suit pocket earlier in the day. Monica smirked, snobbishly glancing at Daniela. Daniela would never be able to compete with her. Not 4 years ago, not now. The way things were going now, Daniela would end up imprisoned for theft, while she did nothing wrong. Hell will freeze before she can find her way out of this situation. She'd definitely be blacklisted, even if she managed to get out of criminal charges. Daniela was finished. Miss Grace searched the pockets of Daniela's suit. Christy wiped her tears as she watched Miss Grace's actions. Her heart sped up as she saw Miss Grace rummage through the first pocket. She was reaching into the right pocket now, and the ring would be inside. They would have the evidence any second now. Miss Grace finished searching both pockets and flipped them inside out to be absolutely certain. She shook her head. I can't find the ring. Miss Witcher, you've wronged Daniela. Christy's heart sank. It was impossible. She'd personally placed the ring into the right pocket of Daniela's suit when she supported Christy up, after she was kicked by her boss. There could be no mistake. Christy got up from the floor and looked for the ring herself. She searched both the inside and outside of the suit, but couldn't find the ring. Her heart was pounding with panic. Where could it be? Stacy's face also changed. She rushed into the crowd and snatched Daniela's purse and poured out all of its contents. She definitely would have hidden the ring somewhere more inconspicuous. Stacy didn't notice that the laughter had stopped and people were looking at her strangely, as she was acting suspicious. Why would Stacy want to find the ring so badly? Daniela stood at the side instead of taking back her purse. Her arms folded, she watched the scene uninterested, as her belongings were scattered all over the floor. Moments later, Stacy shouted, "I found it!" She took out a sparkling ring from an inner compartment of the purse and raised it in front of everyone. She looked triumphant. "Look, everyone, we found the stolen ring in her purse. Call the police. We have to arrest the thief." Miss Witcher stared at Daniela with hatred, seeing that her ring's been found. She rushed to Stacy. "Give it to me now." Stacy handed it to Miss Witcher. Miss Witcher grabbed the ring and froze when she looked at it. Stacy was confused, watching Miss Witcher stare at the ring with a blank face, completely still. She acted righteous as she exclaimed, "Miss Witcher, you've got to be more guarded when it comes to these types of people. You really can't judge a book by its cover. People like Daniela are morally corrupt and will never understand their way of thinking." She turned to Miss Grace, who raised her eyebrows. "Miss Grace, now that it's proven Daniela is a thief, she'll never be able to work in the company, even if she passed the interview, right?" Miss Grace looked at Miss Witcher and asked, "Miss Witcher, is this your ring?" Miss Witcher shook her head, looking confused. "This isn't mine." "What? It isn't Miss Witcher's ring? Whose ring is it then?" Daniela walked up with a smile and took the ring from Miss Witcher's hand. "This ring was given to me by my mother, so it can't belong to Miss Witcher." After she got her ring back, Daniela deliberately bumped Stacy's elbow when walking past her. Stacy dropped her purse on the floor, and a few small items fell out. A particularly sparkling object just so happened to roll in front of Miss Witcher's feet. Miss Witcher picked it up and took a look. If this wasn't her missing oval diamond ring? Stacy was dumbfounded, and her eyes were as wide as saucers. Why would Miss Witcher's ring be in her bag? It wasn't just Stacy who was surprised. Christy was also shocked and speechless. She personally put the ring into Daniela's pocket. How did it get into Stacy's purse? Stacy was about to speak when she saw Daniela give Christy a conspiring glance. The devious smile on Daniela's lips seemed to hint that they plotted this together and succeeded. Stacy took in a deep breath. Did Christy betray her because Daniela had promised her war? Stacy was so furious, she completely lost any sense of rationality. She looked at Christy with anger and exploded. "You put the ring into my purse, didn't you? Why did you do it? What did Daniela promise you?" Christy energetically shook her head. She was about to explain herself when Stacy slapped her hard. "It's true what people say, a barking dog never bites. Why are you so scheming when you look so innocent and honest? You're even worse than this pretentious Daniela." Christy was taken aback by Stacy's slap. It was tolerable if Miss Witcher called her a dog, but who did Stacy think she was? Did Stacy think she could humiliate her after giving her a bit of cash? "You're the one who told me to frame Daniela. You said that Daniela wouldn't be a threat to you as long as she was considered to be a thief." As if a switch was flipped, the crowd realized what was going on. So, Stacy and Christy were the ones who conspired to frame Daniela as a thief. What a sad case Stacy was to do such a thing. And she was from the Forrest family. What a despicable woman. Stacy realized she told on herself, but it was too late. She tried to explain. "No, it's not me. I was framed by Daniela and Christy. I didn't steal Miss Witcher's ring. I belong to a rich family. I have everything I want. Why would I need to steal a ring?" The people present were no fools. It was obvious Stacy didn't do it for money. But how about other motives? Framing a stronger competitor like Daniela would taint her image and not only close access for her to this broadcasting station, no other station in the country would hire her. This would effectively ban her from the industry for life. What a vicious plan. Even in the best case scenario, Daniela's career would be ruined, let alone if she was charged for theft. She would have been framed for something she didn't do and spend at least 10 years in jail, being innocent the whole time. As for how the ring got into Stacy's purse, no one cared. This was a classic example of karma giving her what she deserved. No one had any sympathy for the vindictive woman. Monica disappeared from the group, walking out without a sound the moment Stacy found the ring in Daniela's bag. She already called the police to make sure Daniela had no time to escape. She was impatiently tapping her foot when she glanced again at her watch. They'd be here any minute. Elevator doors opened, and two police officers walked out. Officers, the thief is over there. Please follow me. Miss Witcher's ring was worth over $1 million, and Daniela would likely be charged with a very long sentence, especially since she's been caught red-handed with evidence proving her guilt. Let's see how Daniela plans to seduce my fiancé Carl, now that she's getting a one-way ticket to prison. Serves her right, the temptress bitch, flying into him the moment she's back in the country. She'll be old and wrinkly by the time she's released. As Monica led the police officers inside, she texted Carl. Carl, I'm really embarrassed for Daniela as her older sister. You know, Miss Witcher in the broadcasting station? Daniela stole her diamond ring that's worth over $1 million. Has she gone crazy for money? Monica smirked proudly as she sent the message. Once they were behind the crowd of onlookers, Daniela heard Stacy crying and wailing at the top of her lungs. It must be Daniela. That bitch framed me when I wasn't paying attention. Don't believe her. I'm being framed. Monica raised her brows. Who's being framed? Was she talking about Daniela? It was a trap set by Stacy and Christy, so Daniela was obviously the one being framed. We received a call that someone stole a diamond ring worth over $1 million. Where's the suspect? The crows immediately spread apart to give way to the police officers. Stacy was so scared. Her pupils dilated and her face got pale and clammy. Stacy, who was always composed and arrogant, was nowhere to be found. As the young and rich Miss Forrest, she's always one to bully and intimidate others. But the moment it became more serious, she turned into a timid, shaking knot of nerves. So 30. His important business is to rule a girl? The leading police officer took out his handcuffs and quickly subdued Stacy. Stacy was so scared that her mind had blinked out, and her lips trembled nonstop. No, I wasn't the one who stole the ring. It's Christy. Christy's legs weakened as she glared at Stacy, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy from her tears. Would I have done it if you didn't instruct me to? You saw Danny as the thorn in your eyes, and you wanted to destroy her so badly. Yes, it's Daniela. She was in the same group as me for the interview. She definitely put Maria's ring into my bag when I wasn't paying attention. Arrest her. I'm innocent. People no longer believed Stacy's words. She had lost her rationality completely, and her reputation had disappeared down the drain. She shouted manically as if she had gone crazy. Daniela, you will pay for offending me. So what if I get arrested by the police? My older brother will get me out quickly. You wait. Danny smiled faintly, her eyes cold and detached. Sure, I look forward to it. Today's incident was her official declaration of war on those who had once hurt her. She would give them no mercy. Although she was still weak in power and was in a passive position, she was not afraid at all. Daniela, you bitch, you thought of ways to make me suffer since you couldn't get my older brother. You shameless slut. You don't deserve the As Stacy was taken away by the police officers, she was cut off abruptly, and her shouts became softer and softer. The crowd of onlookers quickly dispersed as Christy was also taken away by the police for questioning. Maria walked towards Danny hesitantly. Her expression was somewhat embarrassed. I'm sorry. I've mistaken you. Maria was about to bow 90 degrees when her shoulders were held in place by Daniela's slender hands. Danny did not want to offend Maria and make her lose face, since she was still the top anchorwoman at the broadcasting company. If she had really accepted her bow, she did not know if Maria might have planned some dirty tricks on her in retaliation. Miss Maria, I can see you have too much trust for Christy. Just an apology will do. You don't have to bow. Maria's expression lightened a little. She scolded Christy in her mind before she looked at Danny curiously. How did you guess that Stacy and Christy colluded to frame you? Maria understood what had happened after her rationality had returned. Despite herself, she was begrudgingly impressed with how Daniela had dealt with the situation. I became suspicious when I saw you kick Christy. Why would your assistant bring a stranger like me into your dressing room with the risk of getting scolded more by you when she's clearly terrified of you? As your assistant, she would definitely know that you don't like strangers entering your room. Daniela's voice was melodious and steady as she voiced her reasoning. Rays of sunlight entered from the window, and the young woman was immersed in soft golden rays that made her glow like an ethereal being. Her long eyelashes were a wave of dense curls that created a light shadow on her petite face. With her fair skin creamy and flawless, she was breathtaking. Maria was a little surprised. She did not think that Daniela's observation skills would be so sharp at her young age. It seemed she wasn't just a pretty face. She might even become the broadcasting station's brightest pearl in the future. Monica followed the police officers to the first floor. Carl had just arrived and rushed over. He stopped Monica at the sight of Stacy being escorted onto the police car. He asked with his eyebrows furrowed, "What happened?" Stacy saw Carl and started to shout hysterically, with tears streaming down her face. "Older brother, help me! That bitch Daniela framed me! You must save me!" In the luxurious and cool Lycan Hypersport parked not too far away, the driver's seat had been made horizontal, and it lounged a handsome man wearing a pair of sunglasses with a cigar in his mouth. He exhaled a mouthful of smoke and then lifted his straight eyebrows, gesturing towards his assistant, Martin, who had been reporting work to him. "Go and see what happened." Women were troublesome, after all. It was just an interview, yet she had already spent so much time on it. "Young Sir Jordan, there is a transnational conference in the afternoon." Jordan exhaled another mouthful of smoke as he glanced at Martin once with a cold expression. He pressed his thin lips together and said coldly, "Can't you see that I'm doing something important?" His important business was to rule a borough? Martin's lips twitched. "But this transnational conference is very important." "Scram!" Martin bowed his head slightly. "I'll go to the broadcasting company immediately to see what has happened." Martin exited the broadcasting and headed back to the car within 10 minutes. He had never been one to waste time and was always efficient in his work. Martin's heart could not help but jump at the sight of the handsome man wearing sunglasses and exhaling smoke in his sports car. After all this time, he was still amazed by Jordan's face occasionally, even though he had been working for him for several years. It was fortunate that he was not gay. It would be bad to be smitten by Jordan's face. He would be setting him up for something impossibly out of reach, and he would be doomed for life. Jordan's cold and black eyes glanced at Martin under his sunglasses. His sexy, defined lips said coldly, "You don't want your eyes anymore?" Martin coughed lightly into his right hand, covering his mouth in a fist, and smiled sheepishly. "I'm thinking that there probably isn't any woman who would be immune to your beauty." Jordan's gaze turned colder. I'm not a woman. Save your unnecessary flattery and just say what you need to. Martin straightened and quickly explained the situation in the broadcasting company to Jordan. Jordan took off his sunglasses when he finished listening. He narrowed his dark eyes and smirked. His entire demeanor was arrogant and dangerous. Go to Mayor Griffin's and tell him that if he heeds my advice, I will increase my investment in Michaeltown. Martin tried to figure out what Jordan meant. Do you intend to keep Miss Forrest in the police station for a longer period? I naturally won't let her off since she dared to bully my woman. Martin felt a chill creep up his spine, and he looked away purposely. Who was the one who had acted arrogant and ignored Miss Green when they had first met? Jordan threw the document on his lap at Martin, probably knowing what Martin was thinking about. It was that woman who bothered me first. Martin wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. It really was not easy to work for a CEO who had a bad temper. Monica re-entered the broadcasting company after Carl went to the police station to bail Stacy out. Daniela and two other new colleagues that had been accepted had already finished touring the broadcasting company. Monica followed them closely, going down the stairs behind Danny. Monica could not endure it any further once they reached the main hall. She said coldly, Stacy will be bailed out of jail very quickly by Carl. Daniela, in this society, there is nothing that cannot be done if you have the money and status. Danny did not want to pay attention to Monica, as she ignored her and continued to walk ahead with a calm and cold expression. Daniela, just wait. I'm going to tell Father about you bullying my sister-in-law. Once he finds out, he will definitely not let you come to work, even if you pass the interview. Daniela scoffed. When the water is crystal clear, there won't be any fish. When a person is too wise and strict, even if they may be invincible, there will be no followers. Monica's expression instantly became green. She suddenly recalled something as she stared at Daniela's slender and tall silhouette. In retaliation, she smirked and said, Father gave me a Maserati for my birthday. I don't think you have a car. Do you want to take my car and come back to visit the Green family with me? Danny pursed her lips tightly as her chest suddenly ached with stinging pain. Back when she was still the young and arrogant, willful version of herself and was raised by Sam Green, the car that she had wanted the most was a Maserati. She had dreamt for one, pined for one, and longed so much for one. Sam had finally promised to buy her one when she became an adult. In the end, he had colluded with Monica and her mother to ruin her innocence. Thank you, but there's really no need. My ride's already here to fetch me. Daniela saw the Lycan Hypersport sports car parked not too far away, and she walked over on impulse. Monica looked around but did not see any car around to fetch Daniela. She scoffed at Danny coldly for acting strong. What a pretentious bitch. Her jaw dropped when she saw Danny opening the door to the extremely luxurious sports car they had spotted earlier in the day. The exclusive limited edition with only a few models existing in the world. She didn't want to admit it, but it made her Maserati look like cheap trash next to her. Was Danny really being financially supported by the owner of the sports car? Monica ran forward to take a look at what the old man looked like. However, the sports car zoomed away, leaving only a stream of combustion in her face. An idiom meaning do not go to an extreme, regardless of whether it is a good or bad habit, as it can do more harm than good. Scene 31. Bullying. Daniela couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of Monica. The woman was so angry she had jumped on the spot and stomped her feet like a child, her face twisted and ugly. Daniela started humming a beautiful song, and for a moment forgot where she was. The man next to her couldn't help but gaze at her. Her chin was soft, yet defined. Her face was small and pretty, while her eyes were innocent and sparkled like the sun on a cold winter's day. When she smiled, she looked like a beautiful blooming flower. Suddenly, Jordan's black eyes darkened and his face became very serious. He caught a glimpse of the other side of her face. It was red and swollen. He rapidly turned the steering wheel and pushed down the brakes, stopping the car. Daniela wasn't expecting the sudden stop, and her body slammed forward hard. She was about to hit the window when a long, strong hand reached out toward her and grabbed her by the waist, pulling her away from the window. Daniela anxiously bit on her bottom lip and looked into the man's deep dark eyes. She was so pleased with irritating Monica, she completely forgot that there was a devil in the car. The goosebumps crept all over Daniela's body as she flinched at the sight of his handsome but serious face. His jawline was tense, and he looked quite intimidating. Ever since he almost strangled her that one time, she'd always been anxious whenever she was alone with him. The car was filled with the scent she came to associate with him, laced with a faint cigar smell. It was intense and masculine. His body leaned towards her, and her long eyelashes trembled as that strong, fragrant smell filled her senses. He looked at her heavily, his lips pressed. He seemed very upset. Daniela gulped in fear and asked, forcing herself to look calm. What's wrong? Jordan lifted his hand and caressed the side of Daniela's cheek that was red and swollen. A shadow covered his face. He reminded her of a grim reaper. Who hit you? He looked terrified. It was almost as if he found out that someone hit his woman. Daniela looked down. She didn't dare look at him. She shook her head. It's not important. It's been settled. I'm asking you, who hit you? His voice was as cold as ice and layered with anger. Daniela trembled from his harsh tone. I'm fine now. Just leave it. Jordan reached forward and poked her forehead a few times. You are so useless. They even bullied you at an interview? His pokes hurt, but Daniela didn't dare provoke a man in anger, so she decided not to say anything. He continued to poke her. Are you deaf? Why are you so fierce in front of me, but so stupid in front of others? Daniela rolled her eyes at that. So what if I'm stupid? It's none of your business. Did you at least slap them back? He caressed her red swollen cheek with his calloused fingers as he continued to scold her. Even I wasn't able to hit this face when I was angry with you. Daniela couldn't help but reply. You almost strangled me to death. How can you say that? Isn't that bullying? His anger dissipated with those words. He stared at her long, trembling eyelashes as he smirked, then, with a playful, crooked smile, said, Woman, do you even know what bullying is? When he smiled with only one side of his mouth, combined with that wild and handsome face of his, he looked like a bad boy that women dream of. Except, as handsome as he was, he could prove fatal to any woman. Daniela could vaguely guess what he meant. She was about to say something when he leaned forward and covered her slightly open mouth with his lips. It was a strong and dominating kiss that could not be resisted or stopped. It matched his personality, arrogant, showing off, and not caring about what others felt as he always did whatever he wanted. Daniela's eyes sparkled from his kiss. She had nowhere to hide once his huge torso leaned on her, as the car wasn't spacious to begin with. She couldn't stop him from ruthlessly pressing against her lips. Her slender waist was smooth and soft against his strong hand. His grip on her was very tight, as if he wanted to press her toward him. He held onto her chin once the kiss was over. With an evil smile, he said, One day, I'll show you exactly what bullying is. Daniela's disgust for this arrogant man reached another level. He didn't know how to respect people at all. He forced a kiss on her several times and never even asked for her consent. Every time she was kissed by him like that, she had an urge to leave the country again. She didn't want the broadcasting company or revenge anymore. She could leave it all behind. But Liam's illness. She sighed. Whatever happens, she couldn't make any decisions until she met the person whose bone marrow was a match with Liam's. Until then, she'd have to wait patiently. Jordan stopped pressuring her, probably because he felt Daniela's attention drifted off. He was not a nice person, but he did despise himself, knowing he was forcing himself onto a woman, rejecting him with every cell of her being. It was almost disheartening. He pressed on gas, and the sports car started moving on the smooth road again. Daniela suddenly remembered that before the interview, he'd mentioned a photo of her stepping out of shower. She pressed her lips and frowned. She could still taste the lingering scent of his lips, and her lips were hot and puffy. She broke the silence. Mr. Moore, you mentioned that I sent you a photo. What was that about? There was no time to waste. She needed to clarify things with him, make him understand that she really wasn't trying to seduce him. Jordan had one hand against the window and the other on the steering wheel. His sunglasses were perched on his nose, concealing his dark eyes. He seemed cold and distant, looking like he'd destroy anyone who'd dare provoke him. Daniela didn't know how she upset Mr. Moore again. It seemed that everything she did in front of him was wrong. She didn't even say anything about him forcefully kissing her, did she? Daniela wasn't the wishy-washy type. She wanted to clear things up and stay far away from this devil of a man. She did her best to ignore how intimidating he was, and that she was scared for her life, and said, Mr. Moore, didn't we say we'd talk after my interview? A loud and sharp shriek followed as he slammed his foot on the brakes. The friction between the tires and the ground made the car shudder. The sports car stopped once again. This time, though, they stopped at a traffic light instead of by the road. The light was red, but Jordan got out of the car and slammed the door. He slammed it so hard it made the car shake. Jordan stormed off, and she could tell he was very angry. Daniela regained her senses and pushed at the car door. She couldn't open it, no matter how hard she tried. That despicable man locked the door from the outside. Daniela eyed the half-lowered window. There was no way she could even think about escaping through the window unless she became even thinner. She furrowed her eyebrows and looked through the window at the man who slammed the door and left. He took off his jacket and joined a crowd of pedestrians crossing the road. He was wearing his usual black shirt underneath. His shoulders were wide, his waist thin. He was tall and had long legs. Even looking at him from behind, one could tell he was quite handsome. Daniela noticed a few young girls jumping behind him with excitement. Daniela leaned against the chair. She was actually young, too, but she felt she no longer had the energy. Her heart was tired. She was no longer the young and naive person she had once been. That person died. There were even times when she felt lucky to have lived through so many changes. Through everything, she persevered. Red light changed to green, and other drivers who were blocked by the sports car started to honk aggressively. The driver got too impatient, got out, and tapped on Daniela's window. Do you have any common sense? Are you fucking crazy? Why did you stop the car in the middle of the road? Daniela pursed her lips tightly and explained the situation to the driver. But the guy was getting angry. He started to yell at her even more, getting aggravated. Fuck you. I don't give a shit about your pathetic excuses. I'll make sure you get it if you don't move your car. Daniela knew that they were in the wrong. She cursed Jordan in her mind, looked down, and let the stranger continue his tirade. The guy started kicking the car, annoyed that she was ignoring him. He pointed at Daniela's face. So what if you're driving a fucking sports car? You blocking me! The finger that was pointed at Daniela suddenly got grabbed by another hand, interrupting the yelling. Episode 32. To be honest, I have someone I like. The person who grabbed his finger was too fast, and a sharp pain tore at his finger, and a loud crack came out before he could react. What? Fuck! The man cried in pain. His face started to pale as his features twisted in agony. The man curled up, his face scrunched up painfully from having his finger broken just like that. A curse was about to leave his mouth when fear suddenly overwhelmed him at the sight of the tall man who looked as cold, dangerous as a devil, standing right in front of him. His face paled and his mouth clamped shut again. The man's lips trembled as he removed his finger from the dangerous man's grasp painfully. At 30 years old, others considered his personality to be fierce and demanding. He had always thought that he was afraid of nothing. However, this man in front of him was on another level and drew fear from the depths of his mind that he didn't know existed. The man had a penetrating gaze locked on him. His expression was fierce and unforgiving. He exuded a sense of cold-blooded cruelty that was brutal. What did you just say to her? Jordan rubbed his wrist as he flexed his muscles. His expression was dark as he cracked his knuckles. The man stepped back unconsciously and gulped. He looked at Jordan like he was looking at Hades. His voice trembled nonstop. Your car's blocking the way. I'll block if I want to. Why? You have an opinion? Daniela could not get out of the car as the car was still locked. She stared at the man who was standing there in his perfectly ironed black shirt and pants. He was slim and tall. His handsome face was cold in the sunlight, and he looked so arrogant that he seemed like the overlord of this hellish road. Danny was slightly stunned in her heart. How can there be a person like him? He was the one at fault first. The aggressive man was obviously discouraged, and his stance changed significantly. His belligerent manner had become timid and weak, and he looked like he was honestly afraid of getting hit. Daniela shouted at Jordan through the air coming through the window. Stop fighting, let's go. Her voice was crisp and refreshing, like a clear stream of spring water under the bright sun. Jordan's dark expression lightened up at the sound of her voice. However, he continued to stand there without moving. He pointed towards the cowering man, then gestured towards Danny. Apologize to her. The man did not dare to say no to him, and he quickly bowed at Daniela. I'm sorry for scolding you. She was speechless. Jordan got back into the sports car and threw a tube of ointment towards Danny in a spoiled manner. Don't you know to retaliate after he scolds you? Why were you sitting there saying nothing? Are you mute? She mumbled. You were the one at fault first for parking here. I'll park wherever I want to. He was still arrogant with his dark expression. Daniela had nothing else to say to such a self-important narcissist. She lowered her gaze to the ointment he had thrown on her lap. She picked it up and read the label. It was effective in reducing swells. She looked at him in confusion. You got out of the car to buy me this? Jordan turned his head to stare at Danny. His dark eyes seemed like they wanted to swallow her up. He only considered her coldly for a long while before he responded. I don't want to lose my appetite from seeing your ugly and swollen face. Danny was speechless. She knew that he would never say something nice. Apply it 3 times a day. Danny hummed in agreement. apply it once now, she said. I'll apply it when I'm home. Jordan did not speak anymore. He parked the sports car in front of a private restaurant and undid his seatbelt. However, he did not get out of the car and instead took the ointment from Daniela's hand. He leaned forward and helped her apply the ointment on the red and swollen part of her face. He was too fast. Danny wanted to stop him, though he was too fast for her to do so. She sat up stiffly, her back ramrod straight and tense. Her breath was caught in her throat as she stared at his extremely handsome face. Even at such a close distance, his eyelashes were long and dense. A lot of women would go green with envy. At the thought of the long dress she was wearing, she tilted her head and questioned. Jordan, did Elvis give me the dress under your instruction? Jordan raised one straight eyebrow as he inspected her closely after applying the ointment on her face. Why? I don't know what you see in me, but I don't want to hide from you. I like someone. Jordan squinted his raven eyes after hearing from Daniela that she had someone she liked. An unknown form of restlessness rose in his chest. He rarely had such a feeling when a woman had someone else she liked. There was not a woman who did not like his face. However, she had told him clearly several times that she did not like him. Shit, it made it seem like he liked her a lot. Danny knew that she had made him angry again, seeing that his expression was slowly turning colder and darker. However, things like feelings needed to be said earlier. If not, it would only cause more and more misunderstandings with the other party. Jordan, please don't be angry first. Listen to me. Daniela had studied broadcasting and hosting, after all. The flexibility of her voice was very high, and she knew the nuances that were effective in placating anger. She made her voice softer and more emotive, and it caressed Jordan's restless heart with an invisible hand. Jordan's black eyes darkened, seeing how Daniela humored him like a child. He stared at her without a fathom. Do you think I like you? Danny moved her lips. No. He said it the last time that he only wanted her to be his mistress. She was not delusional, nor was she stupid. She would not hallucinate and think that he liked her. Rich and influential young guys like him were usually only interested in her for a moment and wanted to play with her for that flighty second. Relationships like these would never last. It's good that you don't. Jordan took out his phone from his pocket. He opened WhatsApp and showed her a photo. If that brat didn't make me add your WhatsApp and send me a photo of you right out of the shower, do you think I would take another look at you? Daniela's lips twitched as she stared at the photo of her wearing a camisole dress with her hands drying her hair with a towel. Liam, this brat, he actually betrayed her secretly. Daniela wanted to delete the photo, but the man took back his phone before she could do so. He stared at her like a king as he ordered, Add me again. Daniela was speechless. It seemed that Liam was afraid that she would find out and had deleted a certain someone. No wonder why Jordan had gotten the wrong impression. Hurry up! That person shouted impatiently. Daniela's heart thumped from his shout. Even if this type of person had a good-looking face, his temper was so bold that it kept people away. That was why they said that God was fair to everyone. He was handsome, but he had a foul temper. No one was perfect. The world was in harmony again. Why do you want to add me? There isn't anything to talk about between us. The man ignored her and took out her phone from her handbag before Daniela could finish her words. He threw the phone back at her after he was done adding himself. He ordered again with a dark expression. See if you dare to block me again. Danny was speechless again. Why did it seem like he could not understand anything that she told him? The reason for telling him that there was someone she liked was to not contact her again. However, He... Danny felt a pang in her forehead and groaned inwardly. She already felt an incoming headache. What a disaster. There was never a lack of pursuers around her, and she had experience in rejecting others as well. However, it was the first time she was completely clueless when it came to this bad-tempered man. Daniela closed her eyes and took a deep breath before she said helplessly, "Jordan, the Brad that you're talking about is actually my son." A typical man did not usually like single mothers, especially if said man was rich and influential. They did not want to leave any potential for a dark stain on themselves. Rich and powerful families were the most particular about a female's innocence and good background. She no longer had either of these now. Daniela glanced at the new notification that popped up on his screen. They were friends on WhatsApp again. His thin, sexy lips moved. "What's so surprising about the brat being your son?" Daniela was speechless once yet. He was not supposed to have this reaction. It was like he simply refused to follow the script. "I slept with a man when I was 18 years old." Jordan's expression darkened as he glared at Daniela. "Are you still in contact with that man?" "No. If he looks for you again, I'll cripple him." Jordan was not a typical man. Episode 33. What do I do if I'm rejected by a woman? Daniela didn't know what to say anymore, so she simply rolled her eyes, annoyed. They were basically speaking different languages. No matter. It was best if she didn't talk about these things to him, since he hadn't mentioned financially supporting her again. She was fine with that. Daniela looked around when the car stopped and let out a deep breath. They parked in front of a private restaurant, and she raised an eyebrow in confusion. "Why are we here?" "Aren't you planning to treat Elvis to dinner to thank him for the dress?" "It would be my pleasure to treat Elvis to a dinner." Daniela smiled faintly. Jordan furrowed his eyebrows, and a shadow covered his face. He grunted out the name of the private room. "Get out of the car and go in first." Daniela was baffled. What had she done now? Was he not the one who brought her here? How was he angry at her again? Was it because she agreed to join Elvis for dinner? But he's the one to suggest it. Forget it. I'll never understand what he's thinking. Daniela opened the door and got out of the car, not wanting to think about it any further. Jordan stared at her slender back. She was tall and slim, with curves in all the right places. He didn't follow her out of the car. Instead, he took out a brown wooden box and a small black lighter from the glove compartment. His muscular body leaned against the car seat as his long fingers picked out a cigar and put it between his thin lips. He flicked open the lighter, and a blue fire burst out. He held the cigar to the fire and flicked the lighter shut when the cigar turned black and burned. He squinted, exhaled a white puff of smoke. In the cloud of smoke, the woman's slender figure became hazy. In his turn, the man hidden behind the smoke looked even more mysterious. Suddenly, his phone vibrated and disrupted peace. Jordan pressed the cigar into the ashtray, picked up the phone, looked at the caller ID, and swiped the phone to answer. Will's playful voice was on the other end of the phone. "Jordan, why weren't you at the conference in the afternoon? I asked Martin, but he just told me to call you and ask directly." Jordan squinted his black eyes. He was back to being cold and reserved, showing no lightheartedness he had in front of Daniela. "What do I do if I'm rejected by a woman?" Will laughed viciously. Yet he didn't dare to laugh too much, not to anger the person on the other end. "Bro, you've got to be joking. How could any woman reject you with a face like yours? It can't be that same one that blocked you on WhatsApp, can it?" Jordan didn't reply. Will could feel the tension even through the phone. He quickly added, "You being you should just take her by force after being rejected." "Do you think I'm desperate and classless?" "Oh, I didn't know you could be such a gentleman." Will's laughter was becoming more vicious as he no longer bothered to hide his cackle. "Haven't you heard that the way to a woman's heart is through her vagina?" Jordan's lips curled into a smirk. "Makes sense. So you should hurry up and go have your way with her. Even if it doesn't work the first time, you can try a few more times." Jordan's eyebrows lifted crossly. "Speak for yourself. You're the one who can't do it." "How can I not do it when I change my women as often as I change my clothes? You, on the other hand, when were you last with a woman? I can't even remember any in all these years. I'm just afraid that you'd, in 5 seconds, due to anxiety." Jordan interrupted Will. "I'm gonna kick you till you're so close to death you won't even last 1 second in the future." Okay, I'm wrong. Please don't kick me to death. You are most competent. 1 or 2 hours won't be a problem, even if you haven't touched a woman in years. Get lost." Jordan hung up the phone. He glanced up and looked at himself through the rear mirror. Shouldn't his face be enough to make a woman want to have her way with him? She should be begging him to be with her. Why was Will suggesting he turn into a rapist? Damned woman. Does she really think I care about her? When Daniela entered the private restaurant, she asked the hostess where the serene room was. They gestured down the hall, and she wandered down the corridor slowly, her steps dainty and full of grace. A hand grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her just as she turned the corner. Daniela was pulled by force into a garden of the private restaurant. She shook the stranger's hand off her the moment she stabilized herself. The man was wearing a stylish striped blue shirt. He was tall and handsome, and his amber brown eyes gazed at Daniela with a penetrating coldness. Daniela rubbed her wrist and looked away from the man's face. She said coldly, "Carl, you're Monica's fiancé now. It's not appropriate for you to be seen with your ex-fiancé." Carl took a moment to look Daniela up and down. His eyebrows furrowed at what he saw. This was the first time he could look at her so closely since she came back. She looked like a completely different person when compared to Daniela from the past. The immaturity that she used to have was gone. This woman had light makeup on, and it made her look both innocent and charming. She didn't look as proud and willful as she was 4 years ago, and seemed more gentle and elegant now. The dress she was wearing accentuated her figure in best ways. Her skin was as fair as alabaster. It was smooth and flawless. She had an aristocratic aura to her, and Carl almost thought that he mistook her for someone else. How could someone change this much? Daniela in the past preferred heavy makeup, smoking, drinking, skipping school, and fighting. She was a spoiled brat, and even her father, Sam, thought she was completely useless. Even though she wasn't a very good student, she was always popular with boys. Carl himself spent 2 years convincing her to give him a chance. Despite her arrogant nature, there was a wildness to her that was quite attractive. Too bad she was promiscuous and shameless in the end and cheated on him. He'd never forgive her. All this time, he never understood why she'd accepted his advances even though she didn't like him that much. He didn't know why she wouldn't let him touch her when they were together. It was only 2 days ago, after Monica said something in passing, that he finally understood why. Carl had both his hands in fists. He tried hard to control the simmering emotions as he stared at Daniela with hatred. "Do you think I want to be here with you? Tell me the truth, Daniela. Are you desperate for money right now?" Daniela smirked. "And if I do, what does it have to do with you? I can lend you some money in memory of our relationship if you're in need. You should love yourself more. You're still a green, even though you were damaged by someone 4 years ago. Do you have no shame? How can you sell yourself and let yourself be supported financially by an old man? Think about your background and your family." He looked at her again and scoffed in disgust before continuing. "I know that old men nowadays like women who dress young, innocent, and charming like the way you're dressed now. But don't you think that's disgusting? If your father knew, he would break your legs." Financially supported by an old man? Daniela knew it was Monica who jumped to the conclusion that only an old man would be able to drive a Lykan Hypersport after seeing her getting into Jordan's sports car. "Unbelievable. You definitely got more stupid after getting together with Monica." Danielle smirked. Carl was getting angry with her. "Daniela, I thought that you'd changed since you look different now. I guess some things will always stay the same. A leopard will never change its spots." Daniela raised her head, her skin fair and lips turned into a smirk, and laughed. "Why would I try to impress a fool?" Carl held his rage back behind gritted teeth and nodded sarcastically. "No wonder you become so eloquent. I see those public speech lessons worked wonders. Anyway, I didn't come here to argue with you. Tell me, did you spill any nonsense to the old man?" Daniela raised her eyebrows. She didn't rush to answer Carl. She could tell he had more to say. Episode 34. I'll wait for you at the hotel tonight. As soon as Stacy was arrested, Carl followed the police car she was taken in. The Forrests were a well-known rich family in Michaeltown. They definitely had connections in the police force, and in the past, this meant that as long as he paid the money, he'd be able to bail out anyone. But he couldn't bail out Stacy, his own sister, even if he gave twice the amount for bail. He tried calling the head of the police force, but he didn't even accept his calls at first. Carl had to call a few times before the head of police finally took his call. He admitted that the higher-ups forbade anyone to bail Stacy for the time being. There weren't too many people who didn't respect the Forrest family. All of a sudden, they were being treated differently. Carl pondered for a while and couldn't understand who would go against the Forrest family. It wasn't until Monica called and told him that Daniela was now a sugar baby of an influential old man that the realization hit him. The old man drove a Lykan Hypersport sports car, and the car plate wasn't local. Carl was initially planning to talk to Daniela later. It just so happened that a client invited him to a private restaurant to discuss business. He just arrived and left the private room to take a call when he coincidentally saw Daniela walking down the corridor. "Stacy doesn't have anything against you, and even if she did something wrong, it's just because she is too young and too naive. Why are you so against her? You call that old man of yours now and get him to let Stacy go." So, he can't bail Stacy out. Jordan. Daniela could count the number of people in Michaeltown who were influential enough to go against the Forrest family and not fear any retribution. It had to be him. Although, she also didn't know who he was. Daniela smirked. "Carl, you really do believe everything Monica says. Why are you still so stupid, even though you're in charge of the Forrest Corporation now?" Carl's face changed. "What do you mean, Daniela?" "Figure it out yourself." Daniela turned to leave. She didn't want to waste her energy on him. Carl rushed forward to block her way. He stared at her and asked very seriously, "Daniela, you never loved me because you had feelings for someone else, didn't you? That person you loved liked to wear white shirts and smile bright like the sun. And you saw a part of him in me after he disappeared, and you couldn't find him. So you finally agreed to be with me after I waited for 2 years, right?" Daniela's hands formed into fists. Her fingers pressed tightly into her palms, and her nails were about to break her thin skin. "You never let me touch or kiss you after we got together. because you didn't want to spoil the idealized image of that person in your heart, right? Her long, curly eyelashes drooped down. She was embarrassed and a little hurt. This was a secret that only she knew, but revealed so blatantly by another person. She buried that secret deep in her heart back when she was a teenager. Monica gave me a diary 2 days ago. Monica stole my diary? Daniela cut him off before he could finish what he was saying. She only kept a diary when she was 13 and 14 years old. She hid it away after that person disappeared. She wanted to take the diary with her when she left the country, but couldn't find it. So, Monica stole it. Daniela, I know that notebook is very important to you. I can return it, but I have 2 conditions. Daniela cocked her head to the side and gave him a cold smirk. So that's how it is. They were the same type of people, no doubt. They had the nerve to give her conditions after stealing her stuff. First of all, you tell that old man of yours, your sugar daddy, to release Stacy. Second, Carl's Adam's apple bobbed as he stared at Daniela's pretty face. I'll see you in room 8088 at Parsons Hotel tonight. Even though she was damaged goods, he still didn't want to let her go before getting a taste of her. Before leaving, Carl leaned towards Daniela's ear and whispered so quietly that only the two of them could hear. If you don't show up, I'll burn that diary. After Carl left, Daniela leaned against a big tree, looking up at the sky that was getting darker. Her long eyelashes were covering the expression in her eyes. When she was 13 years old, she was severely ill and had to undergo surgery. After it, she had to take hormone drugs, which caused her small, egg-shaped face to swell like a bun, her long black hair to wither and bleach to a straw-like yellow, and her body to become bloated. She didn't recognize herself in the mirror. Where did her beauty go? After she became ugly, she was bullied and teased by her classmates and neighbors. Her mother let her skip school for half a year, knowing that she was self-conscious and hateful comments would upset her. Her mother took her to a resort to rest, but she was kidnapped and almost died. When she lost all hope, someone rushed in and saved her. At the time, she was quite heavy and ugly, but the boy didn't find her repulsive. He carried her home and took care of her for several days. When her mother found her and brought her back, she only knew his name, Justin. The boy with the sunny smile was only a year older than her. A cell phone ringtone pulled Daniela out of her memory. She saw the caller ID, took a deep breath, and adjusted her mood. She pressed the answer button, a sweet smile on her lips. Darling, Mommy won't be back for dinner tonight. You have to behave and listen to Grandma Jess, okay? The excited chattering of Liam on the other end of the phone made Daniela smile gently. Yes, darling. Mommy passed the second interview. Of course, there's nothing your mommy can't do once she has her eyes on the prize. Okay, let's call your 2 godmas and celebrate this weekend, okay? She continued to smile as she heard Liam burbling happily. Okay, Mommy will be back later. I know. I will be careful. Mwah. After the phone call, Daniela's mood instantly improved. For her little baby, she would be the most fearless woman warrior. She put away her phone and walked towards the private room. As she turned the corner, she saw a tall figure leaning against the wall a short distance away. He stood under a dim light, unlit cigar in his mouth, fingers playing with a lighter. Every now and then, he'd flip the lid and a blue flame would come out, but he didn't light up his cigar. He didn't look at her, but she noticed a distant and sarcastic look on his face. Daniela's heart jumped. Did he hear her conversation with Carl? But whether he did or not, she shouldn't bring herself to care. She had nothing to do with him and didn't need to care about what he thought. Daniela took a deep breath and walked towards him. He heard her footsteps and raised his head to look up at her. His dark eyes were gloomy and pitch black, so deep it was hard to see what was inside. When he was as cold as ice, his aura would also turn cold. With just one glance, he was able to make people lose track of thought. Daniela came up to him and said apologetically, "Sorry to have kept you and Alvis waiting. Let's go into the room." Daniela turned, wanting to go first, but she didn't even make it when Jordan grabbed her by the wrist. He roughly pulled her to himself. Daniela was caught off guard, and the tip of her nose hit against his firm chest. She flinched from pain that made her eyes water. She closed her eyes and forced herself to endure the pain before looking up at him. Almost at the same moment, Jordan lowered his head, menacingly staring at her. His black shirt was casually unbuttoned at the top, revealing his beautiful collarbone. His handsome face was grim, deep dark eyes cold. "Do you have anything else to say to me?" Did he overhear Carl asking her to beg the old sugar daddy to allow Stacy's bail? That would mean he also heard him asking her to go to Parsons' hotel tonight.